Hello, welcome to Being Reintegrated. This is Tim Wright. I'm a little bit exasperated, and the reason why, I'll tell you why. I recently, I'm pretty deeply into the studies of the French stuff. So we'll just put it like that. And so I wanted to read an exclusive French book that I bought from France last year. I'll stop saying that soon. I bought it last year, and what happened is I never got to read it because it's in French. And, yours truly doesn't read French. I'm just highly motivated to find out what the French are talking about. And what I found is something absolutely amazing. Without throwing dirt, without throwing, any weird stuff out there, I discovered through this method that I'm using to translate French documents that that what we had thought before is not what is actually true. A scholar who's well respected, and I'm somewhat, shielding what I'm going to say because I don't want anybody to steal the research, because it's definitely a work in progress. I haven't published it yet, which I will. But essentially what it does, I wanted to get to it, is it gives us a theoretical commentary on the theurgical work of the green band of the Eleucoan. So that in and of itself is profound. What happens, I always knew about this text, but what I didn't know is who it was attributed to and how it interrelated with another text. That is something that I only found out when reading the scholar from France's work. And, you can't even buy it in the United States. So if anybody tried to pick up this area, which I've been pretty vague on purpose, even if you tried to pick up the area, it would be extremely difficult, even if I gave you my sources in this particular video. But the point is to show that, I'm going to be working on this for a little while. I don't know, maybe a half a year or so. And what we have, drum roll please, is the SummaTheurgica. It's never been done before from an Eleucoan perspective. We have Illuminism, and then which is usually the doctrine of the Eleucoan and Illuminists. And then we're moving now into a theosophy that's directly related to theurgical actions. It's profound. It's basically the explanatory text that we needed for the green band, but which we never received. So I'm working with that, putting together a private translation of some French works to make sure I get everything lined up properly. So I don't want to mislead anybody with my own constructions because, as you see, I'm kind of creative and could be a little bit constructing of something from false areas that is possible, and so I don't want to be confused as that kind of person. I'm very dedicated to this work, and I'm willing to do it the right way. So it's really cool that we have that now, and I am working on this thing. So it is something that I have not seen anybody talk about, and it needs to be talked about. Essentially, the Green Book, I'll let you know rather than vagaries, the Green Book has an explanatory text behind it. So if you know your sources, if you know your research, you can actually see the explanatory text. Now, not to mention that we have a new number presentation by George Quartz. I mean, that is published, so we can talk about that. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Essentially, what we have here in chapter 13, it looks like it's an operation on numbers. So I'm going through it a little bit so you can see it. This is the very first English translation of George Quartz's Chapter 13 out of the first book of the Algiers manuscript. And I talked about this with the experts, and for some reason, I don't know, maybe because of copyright purposes, it couldn't be grabbed. But this is on the podcast. This is not being made public in the sense that anybody is going to just be able to pull it up and have access. But this is an English translation of Chapter 13 of George Quartz's manuscript of Algiers. But what is really cool about it, if you go through it, now anybody with some computer skills can, basically see this. But this isn't proprietary. I don't plan on publishing this. So, it's available to look at. But, hey, I'm not saying violate copyright. I'm just saying that I made a private translation of this chapter, and you're seeing it right here. But one of the coolest things that I found in this chapter is something that that a lot of people probably have not gotten, have not received, so to speak. And essentially what that is the pentagram. The ternary is imperfect and causes confusion. In fact, allied with duality, the ternary generates disharmony in creation, and the false number 5. That is profound. Essentially what it's saying is the 3 creates the 5. Now, it says George Quartz. So, in this book, he goes through a lot of commentary on a lot of stuff. So we're very lucky to have this. If you can get it to the United States, you'll be able to have access to this. And that's why I say if. It's a really hard series, not only to acquire, but it's pretty expensive too. I mean, you're looking at $400 for $375 or $400 for a whole set of 3 of them. And then again, they're only in French. So you can't get it to America. These limited French resources are not available in the United States, and they're cost prohibitive. So, I'm doing a little bit of private translation on it just so I can talk about the topic that I want to talk about, which I was vague about in the beginning of this conversation. So no, I'm not relying on only video, but yes, I am using video to inform people about what it is, because Kim Publishing is going to probably be the leader in theurgical exposition, and that's not because of any kind of acquisitive power. That's because of the fact that I've been researching this long enough to be able to put the dots together when the clue was given in the French book that I got last year, and that thesis had been completely defended, in front of a board. So I don't have any problem with saying that it comes from this person, because they did the defense to be able to properly talk about it. Anyway, so what I found really cool in the number 5, and this is why I wanted to even make this video, for those who can understand. This is the translation of Chapter 13, but it talks about how number 5 cannot harmonize the circle. I don't know exactly where it says it right this moment, but so I'm not going to bring it up. But the point is that 5 creates a force that makes it impossible to harmonize the center of the circle. So I find that very cool. It's coming up, and he goes through a exposition on the teachings of Giordano Bruno. I just think that it's absolutely profound, that it came up like that. Here, let me find it because it's not quite coming up the way I want. Let's see here. So the number 3, which is in the material world, is also linked to the number 5. Now, I know what you may be thinking, that, okay, the number 3 is the quadruple, Godhead. So why is it saying, or why is George Courts saying the number 3 leads to the number 5? And that is a very interesting way to say it. But we got to remember that when they say that the Godhead is ternary in nature, this is how the one can be seen through 3. This is not the nature of the one to be 3. The nature of the one is to be 1, beyond all number. So the number 3 here, which is being talked about, that's the nature of the number 3, not the nature of the number 1. Which is very interesting because it says that the number 3 leads to the number 5. And it says that it fights the with the synary at the center, therefore to rule over creation. So when a 5 is created, it's a force that's created that's warlike, that fights with the 6 in the center. And then, there's some other stuff here. I mean, it's a really profound article. It's a false root called 5. So the synary and the quinary are essentially in this loggerheads battle. And that's where we get a lot of the Ahrimanic talk, that there's 2 primal forces that are fighting. One is harmony, the other's disharmony. One's Ahura Mazda, the other's, the other is, you have Ahura Mazda and Azura, I think it is, Ahriman, and those, it's a lot of stuff. Zoroastrianism talks about these 2 principles, and Mazdeanism. So, these are the 2 fights between the dualistic pairs, which we sometimes use as that is God, is the duality fighting. But God is not this duality fighting. This is the nature of the 6, which leads toward the center, and the 5, which leads toward disunity and cannot harmonize in the center. That's why I think what Courts wrote is so good here. But it was only in French, and so I had to translate it to English. Now, of course, you're seeing my personal translation of it. And I keep saying this because I'm not trying to plagiarize his material. In fact, there's material here that is absolutely necessary to the right of the Elukoan. But unless you know what you're looking at, you won't be able to figure it out. I mean, you can't just read this and know what the number 5 represents in the original blue band of the Elukoan. You're not going to get it. And then you're also not going to understand some of the other implications of which we talk about in the Order de Coens Resuscitae about these particular things. I've been speaking with the co-founder of the group, and we've been talking about this for about a month now. So, and we do our weekly meetings, trying to have these conversations, but it's not the easiest thing to do. Time and money prohibits the constant immersion in this work for most. So anyway, I find it very amazing that we have something like this to refer to. Now what I'll do is I'll put this translation on the Omni shelf so people interested can read it. But again, it's not published. It's just privately to my Patreon viewers who will have access to this link on the Omni shelf, because I plan to privately translate all 3 volumes of George Courts so we can talk about what I'm publicly going to publish through Kim Publishing, which is the the brand new research on what I think I'm going to title the Summa Theurgica, because it's never been done and we haven't heard it from this standpoint. So it's pretty profound, pretty amazing, pretty impacting when you look at all of George Quartz's commentary, the Green Book, as done by whoever you choose. I mean, I like the French version because for me, this is the gold standard. I'm able to see more information than is available just in the Green Book, which is a personalized ritual for Grainville. So if you don't know what you're doing, the Green Book does you no good. Yeah, it's great to have his personal ritual, and maybe that'll give you a feeling of superiority and power that you're able to read somebody else's, personal journal. But it doesn't give you the power to actually actualize this stuff yourself. In fact, you're quite mistaken if you think that you can use Grainville or the Manuscript of Algiers book to do anything yourself, and specifically become a Rocroi. You are not going to get the proper information from there. Now, you may be helped with that knowledge and the Summa Theurgica, which is going to be coming out probably in 2026. But then again, you may not. Because often Martinez said that the training for the Rocroi required a 15-year period of time. And this is why it's so profound, is because the Summa Theurgica is by a Rocroi. So it's somebody who invested the 15 years and then learned how to interpret Eleucoan rituals in a way that it was from an insider. It wasn't from an outsider. So it's not a commentary on the Green Book of essentially Grainville. Grainville's commentary, which is really just his ritual notes of what to do at a specific time for him alone. Because if you pick out of the 2400, your name has to correspond to some of the spirits and stuff. So we have to understand where this stuff comes from and what you're doing, so you understand exactly why that book is, it's good, don't get me wrong. I mean, it does help, but I prefer the George Quartz version. And this isn't even the Green Book. This is just talking about some of the number philosophy that you need to know in order to understand any theurgy out of the Eleucoan system. And you're not going to understand it just by reading some person's interpretation of personal experience of that. So I hope that's helpful. It's not meant to be, incendiary stuff. I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody. We're just going to talk about what exists and what is. So I hope that this guides you more toward an understanding, and that you subscribe on Being Reintegrated Patreon, because you will get this chapter available to you on an Omni shelf that is being created just for the George Quartz translations that I privately am going to refer to in these videos. So I'm glad that we were able to have the conversation. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for grabbing any of the books. And I hope to give you more on this intense review of the Green Book of the Eleucoan and the Summa Theurgica.